Hello friends and family, it is me, Jessie, walking down the street holding a camera on a stick yet again. So today I thought I would talk to you guys a little bit about what my tips are for learning English in China. And as you know, people always advertise you don't need to learn Chinese to teach English, which is true. Oh, foreigner, sorry. I'm turning into a Chinese person. You don't need to learn Chinese to teach English, but I thought I'd give you my tips and sort of how far your English will take you in day-to-day life. So the big question, do you need to learn Chinese to teach and to get around? Essentially, kind of not really, but if you live in a smaller city, so not in like the big tier 1 cities like Shanghai or Beijing, but if you live in a tier 2 city, for example, like I do, which is Fuzhou, it's probably going to behoove of you to learn some Chinese. So even if you don't learn like the whole language, or that's not a goal of yours, learn your numbers. So that's probably one of the most important things, because most people, I can't speak to tier 1 cities, but definitely in tier 2 cities, most people will not speak English. Some young people will, some businessmen will, teachers will, but sometimes, and so you really kind of have to find a way to either, like, as we call TPR, or like basically mime your way through a situation, or learn the basics to communicate. So learn your numbers. Why? Because every time you make a purchase, they're going to say blah 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 块钱. So what you would want to say, if you're asking how much cost, is 多少钱, and that's you saying, how much is this? 这个多少钱? 那个多少钱? How much is this? How much is that? You could use that for food, kind of. I mean, it's not like the perfect, but it's like the most generic one. And typically they'll say, like, I don't know, for the sake of this example, let's say 100 块, they'll be like 100块. Or like, if they're saying it's like 7.5, they'll say like 7块5, which means like 7.5. And so most of those transactions are going to be in Chinese. However, if not, you can always like take out your phone calculator and have them punch in the number and pay that way. Crossing the street with a selfie stick, this probably looks ridiculous, but like I said, that's probably one of the most important interactions you're going to need to have. Learning how to say thank you, though I feel like most people coming to China have learned how to say thank you. Those are sort of the basics that you need. If you maybe need to ask for help, basics like that, ask where the bathroom is, and I always mispronounce, hello big SUV, I always mispronounce the tones for bathroom, every time, every single time. I know how to say it. I've been learning Chinese for like 4 years, and I still mispronounce the tones for bathroom. So if you are learning and you keep messing up your tones, because it is a tonal language, don't worry, it gets better. So what are my tips otherwise, other than like, I see you too. What are my other tips other than like what you can do and what you should learn at first? My other tips would be, so yes, most private schools are going to offer like language classes, and that's going to take you through like the basics of communication, like hello, walking down the street, asking for directions, basic vocabulary that you need to know, how to say like rice, or like talk about food, or numbers probably. I don't know because I haven't taken them. I took Chinese in school, so that's where I learned it. You can take those classes. However, think about it like our kids, right? Like, we're teaching Chinese students, and the best way to learn a language is through immersion. And you're already in the country, so the immersion's already there. But what you need to do is put yourself in situations where you can only use your Chinese. So for me, I have friends who speak Chinese and English, and it's really, really easy just to decide to speak English and be lazy, because I don't feel like thinking about Chinese, because I get my grammar wrong a lot, because I understand how to do the grammar, and I see this in my students a lot too, that they understand how to conjugate a verb, but they don't do it because they don't do it in their own language. So it's sort of the same thing. I don't think about it very much if I'm talking to people I can opt out of speaking Chinese with. So what I do is I joined a gym a while ago, and I have a boxing coach and personal trainer, And my boxing coach and personal trainer is from Ningde, and he does not speak English. He knows like a couple words like perfect and 100 and push-ups and squats, but that's like it. So most of the time we communicate in Chinese, and I not only have picked up his accent, so instead of saying like 这是什么, I say 这是什么 sometimes. So I picked up his accent, which is good and bad in a couple of ways, and I've learned a lot of vocabulary from him because he's one of my good friends. He's been my coach for 6 months, so he understands me pretty well, or like what I'm trying to communicate, and so he can infer what I'm trying to say when it might be otherwise difficult. And so that makes it a little easier. So put yourself in a situation, make friends, go on dates, find a language partner, which is something I'll get to next, where you can only speak Chinese, and it forces you to either have to learn to translate using an app or to speak Chinese. That's been the biggest help for me, is to communicate only in Chinese, and it really helps with your tones because they'll correct your tones. Believe me, they will, because you can make mistakes where you accidentally curse at somebody when you're trying to say the word pen, which I'm not going to do on camera because I don't want to curse at you, and you will naturally hear the tones that they're saying, because the language is so difficult, not just because of reading and writing, but because of the tones. And even if you know the tone, it's really hard to execute the tone, and so that's a good way to help that. There is also language partners. Language partners are essentially where you sit down with somebody. So you find someone who wants to learn English, you want to learn Chinese, you go to like a coffee shop or something, and you teach Chinese for, or no, you don't teach Chinese, they teach you Chinese for an hour, and then you teach them English for an hour, or whatever you work out. And that's just sort of a casual language teaching experience, so you don't have to pay for lessons. So you could just find a random person on an app or one of your coworkers. A lot of times teaching assistants want to do language exchanges, so that's a really great way to do it. And you can set up a language exchange. And of course there's always apps like Duolingo and stuff, but they kind of only take you so far, and sometimes they teach you the wrong thing. And so be careful with apps, but that's a great way to do it. So as you can see, yes, you can get by without learning Chinese, but it does limit you, especially in smaller cities where you have less English speakers, less foreigners. It really does make day-to-day life a little bit easier if you speak just the basics like hello, goodbye, and your numbers. And so when you're coming over, try to make an effort to learn a language while you're in the country, because it's important, and it really helps you learn a lot more about the culture. Make an effort, try to learn your numbers before you come if you can do that. That'd be my biggest tip to you. And find a friend that only speaks Chinese or speaks limited English so that you can do a language exchange or just practice your Chinese with somebody. So anyway, if you have any questions, as always, please leave them in the comments down below. Be sure to check out the rest of Teach English in China's videos. And until next time, I will see you guys soon. Later!